This conference will now be recorded.
Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. Happy Friday, I guess I should say. It's been a unique couple of weeks. We are honored to be able to serve you guys and to be able to provide some, we hope, additional information. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of the COVID-19 business assistance programs. We're going to brush on how they interact and possibly interact with unemployment just a little. It is a constantly moving target, and so we hope you'll give us some mercy, and that's where we want to come to this disclaimer and let you know that we are not experts. We are working very hard to become experts for you. If one thing that I've learned this week that sticks with me the most is that I've not yet been able to find an expert. The fact of the matter is these assistance programs and the regulations related to them are rolling out so fast that the information doesn't just change daily, it can change hourly. Not everything that we think is going to happen the way that we're going to happen is happening. Some of the folks who are tasked with administering some of these assistance programs, they don't have all the tools and the information yet. So while I ask for you to have some mercy on us, I hope that you will also have some mercy on the other folks that are trying to get their hands around this new normal and the vast amount of work that lies ahead of them, because you know they're in this with you together. They're trying to help you with this, and it's just not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be the way we would like for it to be. But we're going to have to just be merciful with each other. So I do promise you that while we don't know what we don't know, we're going to work really, really hard to find out everything that you do need to know. So if we don't have an answer, please know we will work diligently to find an answer for you. Can't promise you that we will always get you the 100% correct answer because, again, as I stated earlier, things are changing so fast. From the last time that I did a webinar direct with you guys, significant changes have happened, and we're going to talk about those especially today. The first thing that we want to talk about, and the thing that's probably forefront on everyone's mind, is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is part of the CARES Act. This is the most recent, one piece of the most recent legislation that has rolled out. The CARES Act stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act. It did allocate $349 billion to help small businesses keep their employees and help them work during the pandemic and the economic downturn. It's the Paycheck Protection Program is the most common thing that folks are calling this particular program. It's 100% guaranteed loans to small businesses that is administered through local lenders. Now, understand, we don't know for certain what the full intent is. So, and it's interesting, Elizabeth just commented this because I'm going to talk on it just a second. Right now, pretty much the folks in our area that are going to be able to do this lending are going to be mostly the big box banks. However, a lot of our community lenders may have relationships. So I do encourage you, first check with your lender that you work with all the time. There's a great chance that they may already have a lot of information on you, especially if you've taken out a loan with them before for anything, that they can help you expedite the process. They may have relationships where they can help put the package together for you. There is also a chance, I have read just as recent as this morning, that the SBA will eventually incorporate some of our community lenders. I know I've spoken with one community lender specifically that has shared with their clients, because time is of the essence on this. And y'all, today is the first day you can apply for a Paycheck Protection Program loan, that they're encouraging their folks, just go ahead and go straight to the guys that can do this. So Mary Moore just reported that Exchange Bank is an approved SBA lender. So I encourage you, before you make any assumption about anybody, go ahead and check with your regular lender. Find out, can they help you with this? Let's talk about eligibility. So you have to have been in operation. Your business has to have been in operation prior to February 15, 2020. You've got to be able to prove that. The eligibility is expanded to include businesses that have employees as well as 1099 contractors, and they can be full or part-time. You can also be self-employed or a sole proprietor and qualify for this loan. 501c3 charitable organizations and C19s, which are generally veterans organizations, those two types of nonprofits are eligible to apply for this. Other nonprofit types are not. And the business and or nonprofit, if it is a nonprofit, must have fewer than 500 employees. Now, that has been identified as per physical location. So if you have more than 500, but you've got 5 locations, as long as there's 500 or fewer at each location, that you're still eligible. So when can I apply? And this is where it can get a little confusing. Small business owners, so if you are a business owner or sole proprietor, you can apply beginning today. Like I said, contact your bank, make sure that that you've contacted them first, and don't be surprised if they're a little confused about everything that's going on, because remember at the beginning of this, I said, have mercy, because they're trying to figure this out as quickly as everyone else is. And I know, from talking with one banker yesterday at 4, it was still being rolled out. The information was still being rolled out to them. They're going to be overwhelmed too. So be merciful. Independent contractors and self-employed are not eligible to apply until April 10th. We do recommend that you go ahead and get connected as soon as possible. This is not a pleasant part to talk about. There is a funding cap. And, all of us have something that's keeping them awake at night right now. What's keeping me awake at night right now is this is $349 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, y'all. There are 30 million small businesses in the United States. So if you want to do the math on that, there is a funding cap. There's a $10 million cap per application. Now, that's why, if this is something that you're interested in doing, it's important to go ahead and start that process. All applications must be processed no later than June 30th. So, there is a chance that you could have a small business that applies, receives the grant and the loan, and then they decide they don't need it, or they don't spend their full allocation and they pay some of it back. So there may be some opportunities for recollection and reallocation later. I don't recommend that you wait on that. I think if you are interested in this, if you think you're going to need it, go ahead and get in there and apply. Martha, you had asked, do you have to file for the PPP before you can apply for the 10,000 grant? These are 2 separate pots of money, and we're going to get to that, okay? The payroll protection plan, where can you apply? Like I said, your local bank. We have acquired a sample, what we believe will be the application to apply. And let's see if I can do this without getting too crazy on it. We believe this is going to be the application that will be used, and most of our bankers believe it will be too, but there is, again, no guarantees in this because things are changing so rapidly. But this form, and I just want you to see it because I want you to, if you're intimidated about this process, I want you to see there's not that much to be intimidated about. This is information you should know about your business. Or it's information that you can easily collect about your business if you do have someone that handles your payroll for you or whatnot. It's just a simple request for information. Oh, see, I'm already here. A new form is out as of last night. Y'all, you just can't keep up with this fast enough. We will try to get that updated as soon as possible. I saw Will is on the line. If someone has the new form, we'll go ahead and email Will. He can get that link updated for us before we even finish this webinar. So Jonathan or Barry, if either of you could forward that to Will, we'll try to get that updated. And if you'll help remind me, we'll come back to it and look at that toward the end of the webinar. Thanks, guys. Yeah, Will just posted his email address for you. So I do want to point out that we want you to beware because there are some sites out there that it's going to look like it's the SBA. And I gave you an example here. We're not going to go visit that, but this looks like it's the SBA. It's not. You notice that .com? Governmental entities are .gov. So I just wanted to tell you, in case you went out and you Googled because you want to find the quickest and easiest route to get your application in, there's a bunch of these out there. So be very, very careful. You should be able to do this with a direct relationship with the lender, the bank. So you shouldn't have to have a middleman. You shouldn't have to pay somebody to do this. If you want to, that's totally fine. And there are some entities. I encourage you, if you do want to pay somebody to handle all of this application for you, give us a call, and we've got members that are capable of doing this, and we'll connect you. And that way, you know, you're working with somebody local that's working for your best interest. But you should be able to do this entirely with your local lender. So how much can I borrow? Again, unless this has changed overnight, you're able to borrow. You'll take your average monthly payroll cost for your business and multiply it by 2.5. So we're going to look at what all payroll costs are considered on an upcoming slide. So you take the sum of those costs for each month. So if you've got your payroll per month, then you add them together, divide it by 12. And the reason we say this is because if you had to have been in business before February 15th. If you've only been in business for 8 months, take those 8 months, multiply it by 8, and so that way you find out your you take your total payroll, divide it by 8, the total months you've been in, and that's how you know what your monthly payroll cost would be. And that you multiply that by 2.5, and that gets you what you're eligible for. That's how much you might be able to borrow. There's no guarantee that you will get to borrow that amount, so you do need to be mindful of that. You can also borrow a total amount of any emergency injury disaster loan received after January 31. It can convert. And we'll talk about a little bit more later too. As I mentioned before, the maximum loan cap is $10 million. So let's talk about what all payroll costs include. So that's salary, wages, commission, or similar compensation, payment of cash tip or equivalent, the payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for dismissal or separation. So if you have terminated someone and you paid a severance, that amount can go into your annual total that you divide out by month. Payment required for provision of group health or any health insurance premiums. Now that is going to be the employer portion. You can't count what an employee pays. The same goes for any retirement benefit. You can count what the employer contribution is, not what the employee pays. The payment of state or local taxes assessed on compensation. For a contractor, if you're looking at a contractor, that is a wage, commission, income, net earnings from self-employment or similar, and compensation that is an amount not to exceed more than $100,000 in 1 year is prorated for the period beginning February 15, 2020 and ending in June 30, 2020. Now, if all this gets really scary for you, trust me, your lender will help you through this. If it gets too cumbersome and complicated, your lender can also recommend and help you find avenues for getting this information and getting it compiled correctly for you, whether that's, going through your attorney. Again, if you need some, if you want to find someone that you want to pay to help you with this, we can make those recommendations for you. So what expenses can I use the Paycheck Protection Loan to cover? So payroll costs related to the continuity of group health care benefits during their paid sick leave, medical or family leave, and insurance premiums. And you have to be careful because there are some other programs out there, benefit programs, and you cannot double dip, especially when it comes to these assistance programs. You cannot use the same monies to pay for the same things at the same time periods. You can pay for employee salaries, commission, or similar compensation, the payment of interest or any mortgage obligation, but that excludes prepayment. And you can only, like I said, only the interest will qualify. You can pay for rent. You must have a lease agreement, and that lease agreement has to be in place before February 15. And you may be asked to, you may be required to prove that you had been paying rent prior to February 15 through canceled checks or whatnot. You can pay utilities or interest on any other debt obligation incurred before the period. Again, just the interest will qualify. What's the interest rate? So these loans, the Paycheck Protection Program loans, will be offered at 0.5%. There will be a maximum term of 2 years, and all payments are deferred for 6 months. However, during that deferment, the interest does continue to accrue during that period. It doesn't, there are, as far as we know, and someone can correct me on this, there is an origination fee or prepayment penalty. There are no origination fees or prepayment penalties for these loans. Okay, and I'm getting more, because y'all, things change constantly. The rate changed to 1% last night. And Will has the new app updated. So how much of the loan can be forgiven? And I'm so grateful for you folks that have this new information. I would love for any of you to forward the new stuff that came out overnight to me, because I did not get that. But this just exemplifies how fast things change. So how much of the loan can be forgiven? And partial forgiveness is available for all of the Paycheck Protection loans, equal to the sum of costs incurred and payments made during the 8 weeks starting on the loan origination date. And that can include all of the payroll costs that we outlined previously, the payments of interest on business mortgages established, and I've stressed interest on business mortgages established before February 15, payment of rent on business before February 15. And again, you've got to have that lease agreement in place, and you may have to prove that you were paying that lease agreement prior to February 15, just like that mortgage. And payment of payment of utilities or any electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet for which the business service began prior to February 15. And folks, those are being put in place to eliminate any fraudulent activities. Obviously, it sounds like a huge pot of money, but when it comes down to 30 million businesses out there in the US needing it, they want to make sure that this money is actually going to business expenses. So what documentation do I need to acquire the loan? You're going to need verification of full-time or full-time equivalent employees on payroll and pay rates. And that includes payroll tax filings reported to the IRS and income, payroll, and unemployment insurance filings reported to the state. You'll need verification of eligible costs incurred and payments made, and that could include canceled checks, payment receipts, account statements, other documentation. You're going to have to be able to show payment of these, not just a copy of a check that you're sending out, you're going to have to show that that check was received and cleared a bank.
Unmuted.
All right, I'm not sure if somebody intentionally unmuted, but I'm going to have to mute all because right now it's, well, let's wait until we get through the end of this before we get to questions if you intentionally unmuted. And so you may also, you're going to have to certify an authorized, from an authorized representative of the borrower that the documents are true and correct, and stating that the funds were used for eligible purposes. Because, you know, again, the government wants to ensure that they're giving money for the intent of keeping businesses alive and functioning. And there may be additional documentation required by the lender. And again, when I get those updated regs that I know some folks are sending to me now, if there's anything additional, we'll get this added to our website as well. So will your loan be forgiven? The loan forgiveness could be reduced. This is what, well, your full loan could be reduced if the number of your verified full-time or full-time equivalent employees during the loan period is less than the average number of full-time or full-time equivalent for either the period of February 15 through June 30, 2020, or January 1 through February 29, 2020. So essentially, they want to make sure that you're keeping your folks employed. Salary wages for eligible full-time or full-time equivalent employees are reduced by 25% or more. You could lose forgiveness for that portion. That only applies to employees earning a salary of up to $100,000 in the equivalent period of 2019. And there are special rules for tipped workers and rehires in a certain time period. Again, these regulations are going to continue to roll out. Liz, I see you're asking on 1099 contractors. I believe that I asked this question, and I, again, cannot guarantee this is 100% true. I believe that employers can apply on behalf of their 1099 employees, but there has to be an agreement that those 1099s are not going to apply on their own behalf as well. So you have to be very careful with that, and that, I think, is probably going to be best answered by the lender, by the bank. That could get really hairy. How long will it take to get a decision on my loan? The lender decisions should, and the legislation says will, but I'm going to say should or could be made within 60 days after the loan forgiveness application is received. So I say this because there are a lot of things that are written into legislation that just aren't feasible to accomplish. And I cannot reiterate to you enough, there is going to need to be a lot of mercy in the delivery of these programs. So please don't go get upset with your banks when things aren't hitting timeframes that you would normally think things would happen. It's just, today is not normal anymore. So we're going to have to be very merciful. So the forgiven part of the loan will not be considered taxable income. I do want to point out the loan providers there is a non-recourse, so they have no recourse against a borrower or eligible recipient unless the loan funds are used for an unauthorized purchase. The loans do not require a personal guarantee or collateral. Again, this may have changed overnight. And loan providers may not charge fees for any paycheck protection loans issued between February 15 and June 30. So essentially, and I hope if there are any bankers on here, they don't mind me taking this personal point of privilege, they have been assessed with this activity and essentially are not going to be getting paid for it. It's going to be a whole lot of work on them, but our bankers love you and want you to stay in business too. And that's why I cannot express to you enough, have some mercy with them as we all work through this. I assure you, they're going to get up to expert status very, very quickly, and they're going to work like everything to take care of you. So just, if you check in with them or they start working on a program with you, please know they're doing their very best. We obviously, things changed overnight the day before the rollout of this program. Don't be surprised if things change again. So this is really important to understand. Can I still get this loan if I really don't need it? Well, the rule of law is, in order to expedite, the applicant must sign an agreement in good faith that, and this is the most important line, the loan is necessary due to the economic uncertainty caused by COVID-19. So that's a question that only the applicant can answer. Only you're going to know, is this absolutely necessary? Do I have to do this? Do I have to take this money? The loan funds will be used to retain workers and maintain payroll and/or to make mortgage, rent, and utility payments owed by the business. And that can include so that cannot include your personal rent mortgage. And I do need to note that as of yesterday, the last regs that I saw, that at least 75% of the funds, the Paycheck Protection Program loan that you receive, in order to get forgiveness, must be used toward payroll costs to qualify for forgiveness. The loan applicants may not have an application pending for another paycheck protection loan through a different lender for the same purpose. So you can't go to two different places and try to get two separate loans. You've got to work with one lender and get one loan for your business. And you can't have already applied for and received one and then go to a different lender for the same purpose. So, that's one of the questions that I've had asked. Can I get this loan? My checking account's not depleted yet, but it's not looking good in the future. And, I can't answer that question for you. Only you know what your revenue outcomes look like normally and what you anticipate because of whatever type of service or goods that you sell. You're the only one that can really anticipate how quickly and how excessively this is going to hit you. So I just want to point out that you do have to, as an applicant, affirm that it is necessary for you. So if you already had a loan through the SBA, most likely you had a 7A guaranteed loan, a 504 loan, or SBA microloans. So the CARES Act that created the Paycheck Protection Loan Program also allows for debt relief of these SBA guaranteed or SBA backed loans. Excuse me, I got choked. Or that take out a new type of one of these loans. So the loans taken out under the Paycheck Protection or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan are not eligible for the type of debt relief that we're about to talk about. It's just going to be for these three, the 7A guarantees, the 504s, and the micro loans. So if you have one of those or take out one of those, the SBA will make all payments on those loans for those types for a period of 6 months. And that includes they'll pay for the principal and the interest. This relief is also available to new borrowers. So if you decide that this is the route you want to go, that is the relief you could expect for that. So it does not exclude you from applying. If you apply for one of these types, it doesn't exclude you from applying for a Paycheck Protection Program. So they're just entirely different. That amount is not, that loan is not forgiven. The relief on those three types of loans, the 7A, 504 microloans, the relief is 6 months of the administrator paying that for you. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loans update, and hopefully I'm still right on this because I literally just checked on this morning with one of our members, tried to walk folks through it. So you're no longer required to register and have a login. They have completely overhauled the application process since I first did a webinar with you guys. And I do want to click out of here and go visit this because we can look at what this application looks like. So before, it was a much more extensive application. You had to put a lot of information in on the front end. So this, we're going to walk through. I can get you to this page, business information, but we can't get to the business owner's information. But I can tell you, it's not none of these are going to have it. The most extensive information that you put in is business information. So for most folks, what you would choose is either, I've got 500 and fewer employees, or I'm a sole proprietor or a cooperative. We're just going to, for the sake of getting to the next screen, we're going to choose that we're a business with 500 or fewer employees. And then you've got to affirm that you're not involved in any of these activities, illegal activity, that no applicant with a 50% or greater ownership is delinquent in child support obligations, that it's not an agricultural enterprise or aquacultural enterprise, that the applicant does not present live performances. Well, you can read that. Applicant does not derive more than 1/3 of gross annual revenue from gambling, that they don't participate in lobbying, and that that you're not a state, local, or municipal government and cannot be a member of Congress. And so I wanted you to see what the business page looks like. So your legal name, and if you aren't sure what your legal name is, if you were created in the state of Alabama, you can go to the Alabama Secretary of State's website, search business entities, business records, your business entity, and it will give you your actual legal name. And so a lot of times businesses, DBA, or for example, even with us, the chamber, our legal name is the Chamber, Gadsden / Etowah County, Inc. We don't type our name out like that when we send it out to you guys. This is the Chamber of Gadsden and Etowah County. It just flows a lot better. So that may be, where you would want to have the difference. Your EIN, or if you're a sole proprietor, your social security number. Now, and I do want to reiterate, while today was the opening of the Paycheck Protection Plan for most businesses, this has been open and continues to be open. So here you would say whether you're a nonprofit or not, or if you're a franchise, you're going to need the gross revenues for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. So January 31, 2019 through January 31, 2020. Cost of goods sold for the 12 months prior. Any income, this is any losses due to rents for rental properties. For nonprofits only, this is where if you're a nonprofit, you're not going to have cost of goods sold. You're going to put 0 in there because it mandates an answer. You're going to have your total cost of operations here. Combined annual operating expense for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. For all secular social services, this is going to be just for faith-based entities. And then they require a list of secular social services for those faith-based entities, and then compensation from other sources received as a result of the disaster. So if you've received some other grant, anything like that, that's where you would have to put that other money, and a brief description of other compensation sources. If you've had some unlikely revenue for whatever reason, a change in business model, something that you wouldn't have had in the year prior. Your business address, all that information, email, date established, current ownership established. Your business activity is a drop-down menu, very self-explanatory. And then once you do a drop-down menu, you may have, some of these have additional drop downs that you would need to select. And then your number of employees as of January 31, 2020. So even if you have furloughed employees since then, you do put in the number that you had at that time. And then can't get past this without actually starting an application. So we're not going to do that. I don't want to clog up the system, but business owners information is next. That's going to be the individual information, If you've put in an EIN here, you're still going to have to provide a social security number, even nonprofits if you're applying for this. And this is available to all nonprofits, we believe. C6s were included in this. Now, I know when I completed this application, I had to put in my social. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're a agent at a nonprofit, the banks that you work with, they have your social on file. And then the additional information includes things like your bank routing number and banking account. But I'm telling you this, for the nonprofit side anyway, because I can't fill out one for a business, I can't attest entirely to that. This took about 10 minutes to complete. There is on the additional information page, there's a critical box that if you are looking for the $10,000 cash advance, you have to check that checkbox. And we'll go back to, let's go back to our slideshow. So again, that $10,000 is forgivable. That's an advance. It's a loan that turns into a grant. Now I'm going to tell you that the legislation states a 3-day turnaround on the emergency grant and that it deposits straight to your bank account. We applied earlier this week, and I have not yet received an email confirmation, and I've not seen that amount deposit in our bank yet. That is not unusual. I actually did a quick search this morning and found a Reddit thread, and out of 140 some odd responses to a question, has anybody received their grant yet? I did not find a single one that has. I'm not surprised. I mean, this is rolling out super fast. So, you know, hope that may take a little bit longer, especially at the beginning of this, as we work through all of the nuances. So what can you use those economic injury disaster loans for? They can only be used to pay for fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid if the disaster had not occurred. The loans cannot be used to replace lost sales or profits or to pay for an expansion. It cannot be used to pay down long-term debt or to consolidate debt. If you applied for an economic injury disaster loan before March 30th, you likely used the old form, the one where you had to create a username and password and a login. And that was prior to the rollout. I don't know what's happening here. My slides are just advancing on their own. That was prior to the rollout of the $10,000 cash advance. So the guidance that we received is that if you applied prior to March 30th, you must actually reapply. Just disregard what you did before, reapply using the new streamlined loan application, and you need to indicate on that second to last page that you want to receive the advance funds. I do want to let you know I did get an article that there was a potential security breach on some of the applications that were made prior to March 30th. So it's always a good idea to just keep an eye on your credit report. So it wouldn't hurt in the next few days to go out there and check that just in case. And you can get additional information on this from sba.gov/disaster. So how do these two loans work together? So if you get a payroll protection program loan, or you refinance an economic injury disaster loan into a paycheck protection loan, because you may have already applied for that and been awarded that, and now you've decided you would like to convert it, you can. The amount of the emergency economic injury grant received will be deducted from the amount forgiven under the terms of the paycheck protection loan. So if those amounts that are not eligible will have to be deducted. The emergency injury disaster loan funds and the paycheck protection funds can't be used for the same purpose. And an example of that is, let's say you got it, you got the 10,000 advance already, and you're paying April's payroll with the 10,000 advance. When you get that Paycheck Protection loan in May or in the middle of April, you cannot pay those April payroll expenses you've already paid for with the emergency grant. So essentially, you just can't double dip. If you pay for it with one, you can't pay for it again with a second one. You're getting paid twice for it. We did create, we hoped, kind of a quick glance graphic. Miranda put this together for us. And again, we believe this to be correct at the time of publishing it. And it just gives a quick overview. The emergency injury disaster loans, there's 10 billion available for that. So, you know, again, there's a cap. There's a cap on Paycheck Protection Program of 349. Sounds like a ton of money, and it's not when you consider all the need that's out there. So I encourage you to get your applications in as soon as possible. The economic injury disaster loans, we're calling them EIDLs, they are administered and approved by the SBA online, as I showed you, and the Paycheck Protection loans are backed and approved by, they're backed by the SBA through local lenders. As far as eligibility for EIDLs, a small business with less than 500, sole proprietors, independent contractors, 501c6, and additional 501cs are eligible for Paycheck Protection. Small businesses and nonprofits, with some nonprofits with less than 500 that we reviewed before, and sole proprietors and self-employed and freelance workers. You can see the breakdown on financing there. The difference, again, we're going to have to change that interest to 1%. That's already changed. And that the EIDLs are, that 10,000 can be a bridge loan and can be forgivable if it's used for approved items, approved fees, like payroll and business costs. The Paycheck Protection, it does not require any personal or collateral guarantee, and up to 75% has to be used for payroll. The two different ways you can apply here. And then, you know, just to note that both loans can be applied for and granted if they cover different expenses. If you have furloughed employees, but you still desperately need them to work, you just haven't been able to pay them to work, you can bring them back off unemployment and put them to work and use these loans. They had to have been on staff and working for you prior to January 31 when the disaster happened, or February 15 for the Paycheck Protection. And for, you know, we recommend try to go ahead and get all your information together and prepared that we went over, so that you've got as much information as possible available for the banks when you do work with them. And again, be careful about those online sites and fraudulent schemes. Be careful with emails you may receive. I know Jonathan Tang, our chair, notified us that pretty early on he got a fake email that portrayed itself to be from the SBA and was not. So your next steps: gather your payroll and operating costs. If you do it all in-house. If not, you know, connect with your lender and let them know who you work with for payroll. Find out what all they need you to get together, or if they can work directly with whoever you work for your payroll and your AP. Stay tuned, because there could be more packages of assistance rolling out. And we feel sure that regulations will probably continue to be tweaked and changed. And I just can't remind you enough that patience is, I know a lot of our patience is wearing thin. I don't want to sound like doom and gloom, so don't take this as doom and gloom, but I think we're on the front side of this. I don't think we've hit the top of the hill yet. So do what you need to do to help your mental health and prepare you for the long haul. But know that all of these systems, the Small Business Administration, all of these banks, they're being overloaded, and they're trying. They want to help. So it's not that they're trying to ignore you, or they don't want to be there for you. It's just they're trying to get their feet under them so that they can help you. And it's going to be really stressful. So as much grace and mercy as you can provide, please do so. And so we'll try to take some questions now. I do want to mention, that, let me get back to that, sorry. Let's see what questions we might have missed. Yeah, Elizabeth pointed out that it will be helpful that we have banks in town that'll be doing the loans. And I think it's always great to work with the lenders that know you and that you know them. Liz Wood mentioned that Regions had the application up this morning, but had to take it down because the server overloaded. Those things are going to happen. It's definitely out there. Jennifer Green mentioned, I found that some previously approved SBA lenders are opting not to participate in this program. Again, it's going to be a lot of work on them. And so, I've got one lender that did tell me that they were not identified as an approved lender, but they were trying to make sure they connected their regular folks with folks in town that could help them instead of just, eliminating that local relationship. Yeah, Jennifer mentioned that the banks are still struggling to know what's going on. Let's see, Martha said, do you have to file for the Paycheck Protection before? No, you can apply, and you have been able to apply for the $10,000 grant. You don't, now when you apply for that $10,000 grant, you are essentially applying for a loan too, but you don't have to take that loan. They may come back to you with an offer for an additional loan. You can take the $10,000 grant and not take out any additional loan. Yeah, Jennifer, I agree. The big message is don't give up. Keep trying. If the servers are down, if the phones don't answer, you're just going to have to spend some time on this. But again, no matter how frustrated you get and how thin your patience wears in this process, just remember that person on the other line is trying to help you. Let's see, where can you access the application? Jennifer, can you tell me which application you might mean? And I did want to go back. That's a good point. I did want to go back and let's look at, Will said he got that updated for us. So let me reload this and go. I want to point out our website. We've tried to put everything on here that we could possibly find that might be beneficial to you. So Jonathan, does this look like the correct one now? Which is interesting. This is the one I had initially. It had the 9/30 date, and then I was told it had the expiration of 6/30, and that's the one we used to have up there. So let me know if that's still the wrong one. Let's see, Jennifer said, does anyone know for sure of any banks that are in fact participating? So yes, I know BBVA, Regions, a lot of the larger banks are. Exchange Bank reported that they are earlier on this thread. Yeah, and that's true. Previously approved SBA lenders, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're approved for the Paycheck Protection. The information that we had rolled out to us from the U.S. Chamber and from several other sources said that there's an approved list on SBA.gov. I've not been able to find that list. I found the top 100, and I don't think that it necessarily really actually applied to the PPP. It was just the top 100 that had administered SBA 7A loans in the past. So I can't find that actual list. I've deep dived into it and can't get to it. If someone does find that list, and especially one that you can sort based on location and can send that to me, I'd be happy to get that out to everybody. Jennifer Price with Exchange Bank noted, an agent like an accountant or lawyer preparing the borrower's package cannot charge the borrower. The lender does. So there is a percentage scale. So that's important to know. Nanda Patel pointed out that one of the associations she's involved in said that the limit was 50 $100,000. Not sure if that is right. There's so much information rolling out there. And Jennifer clarified that the lender pays the agent for this service, not the applicant. That's really great information. I didn't know that, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing that. Misty Smith said, will this be for 2019 income? Can you use 2018 if you haven't filed taxes for 2019? That's going to depend on a couple of things. You don't necessarily have to use your 2019 tax returns to show your payroll. You can use your just financials or a financial statement that you have. But those lenders for the Paycheck Protection could require additional years of income tax as well. For the economic injury disaster loan, that $10,000 advance, you're going to have to just use your financials from January 31, 2019 to January 31, 2020. That's where you guys notified me the rate was up. Let's see, where does the business owner's credit score come into play? That's a great question, Jennifer. So nowhere in the application for the EIDL did I get anything on credit score. I am assuming they're going to take the EIN and the Social Security numbers, and that's where that could come into play. But at no point did it, do I recall authorizing check of business of credit. On the borrow or application form, we'll go through that in a little bit. There may be something on there. Liz, let's see, I think we answered that question on the 1099s. If we do not pay back the right way, what rate will this loan be at? I think you were probably talking about the Paycheck Protection loan. That was 1%. And it must be paid in 2 years. On the EIDLs, that's 3.75 if you are a business, and that's over a 30-year term, and it's 2.75 if you're a qualified nonprofit, and that's also on a 30-year term. So Misty asked, do we file for unemployment if I'm a sole proprietor? So that's a really good question. This is a conversation I've been having a lot with a lot of businesses. And so I can't tell you what the right thing to do is. I can tell you that if your business is closed right now and you are not able to work and you do not have any income, you are eligible to apply for unemployment immediately. And you can apply for unemployment for yourself and your employees or your employees, depending on how you're structured, whatever you prefer. And when and if you get the Paycheck Protection Program loan, you can come back off of unemployment and begin receiving wages that way. You cannot draw unemployment and get paid a wage, no matter what. Whether your store is paying you a wage, whether Paycheck Protection Program is allowing for you a wage, whether you're using the $10,000 for a wage, you cannot receive a wage and get unemployment. You can go on unemployment for 3 weeks if you need to until you get a loan. I can't tell you what is best. I can tell you what I would consider doing if I were a sole proprietor. My business is completely closed. I can't do business at all. I have no income coming in. I'm more than likely going to apply for unemployment. If my business is such that if I had some wages coming in so that I could do business and that would help me, I'd apply for that Paycheck Protection loan. I would then come off unemployment. I would reopen my business and do everything I could to transact as much as possible and try to fend for myself. If there is no way that I'm going to be able to bring my business back online until we get back to some semblance of normal, or I can't transition my business into an online business or something like that, probably not even going to apply for that Paycheck Protection Program. I might just apply for the $10,000 emergency grant so that I can pay my rents my utilities and things like that, and not go after the additional Paycheck Protection Program. It's really tough to tell you which is the right way to go because everybody's situation is so unique and so different. Jessica said, can you put the last slide up with the contact info? Is this, I'm guessing you mean for the Chamber's contact? Sure, let's see. That's here. We do have our lines forwarded. We take a day each, and so again, if we can't answer your call, if we can't answer your question when you call, I put my personal cell on there. I'll tell you, my phone rings off the hook. I've gotten 4 texts and 3 phone calls while we've been on here. I will get to you eventually, and again, I might not have your answer, but I'll try to find it. Emily Mills, an attorney here in town, said, I was on a call this morning that said you may need a copy of your articles of incorporation ready and operating agreements when you apply. That's understandable. If you don't have a copy of those, you can get your articles of incorporation online at again at the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's website. They do charge a fee. I think it's around $40, but you can get an immediate download, providing your articles weren't from 1913 like the Chambers were. You might have to do a little bit. You might have to wait a little bit longer for get those. Blake Watts said our business added another location in the last year, and we've hired 2 employees as of 2020. Considering this, can we use our payroll from this year, which is much higher than 2019, and we're still employing these? It's going to depend on which loan you apply for. We were talking about the Paycheck Protection. I believe that you're going to have to have had them on before February 15, and that's probably just something you're going to have to work with your lender about. The regulations, they're trying to keep everybody that's employed. And I do point out the Paycheck Protection pays 2.5 times. So it may be that some of those additional employees are covered by the half that you get in addition. Let's see. Belda, yeah, there's several folks that are, if they work with you, they're helping you out. Let's see, what about musicians, sole proprietor? Hey, Albert, basically have a business loan already for a vehicle van, but would this be an option? Yeah, so BB&T, I don't know for certain. I would think most of the larger chain banks are included, Albert. Yeah, you're a sole proprietor. You are eligible to apply for either the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, 10,000 advance, or the Paycheck Protection. Albert, you're also able to apply for unemployment right now. So some of the unemployment regulations have been lifted during this time. So folks that normally didn't pay into unemployment were not eligible to apply for unemployment, but it is different right now. Nanda's asking if it's beneficial to wait or go ahead and apply with a crowd. I'm telling y'all, apply with a crowd. Just keep trying. Albert, let's you and I connect offline and let me see if I can help you find the right way to go. It might also depend on when you applied. So yeah, the reason I say go ahead and apply with the crowd right now is because, like I said, there's a cap. And if the cap gets met, you could not qualify, you could not be eligible just because the cap's been reached. Emily says, also the lawyer and me must advise that when you apply, do not exaggerate your payroll. Absolutely, folks, do not do anything to get yourself in trouble. Just because we are in a state of emergency doesn't mean you will not be culpable for fraud. Emily says you may freely get the approval, but the issue will come on the back end when you must prove the payments for forgiveness. Also, when you're approached, I would place this money in a separate account so that you can easily document how you use the funds from the loan or grant. That is fantastic free advice from your local attorney, Emily Mills. Let's see, do we know when the money will come? No. The answer is a big fat no. There are a lot of regulations saying that certain things will happen at certain times, but again, we're already seeing that the 3-day turnaround is just not feasible. Isn't happening with the $10,000 advance. So no. Emily said, you may have missed it, but this is a 12-month look back for Paycheck Protection, February 15, March 1, March 15. I'm not sure I understand that question, Emily. I'm sorry. It's for paycheck.
What I was asking is, when we go on our 12-month look back for the payroll protection program, is it 12 months from February the 15th, or 12 months from March the 1st, or 12 months from March the 15th? We trying to come out with a monthly average of what your payroll salary is. I haven't been able to get a clear understanding of what that 12-month period is, or is it 2019? You know, what was our average payroll salary for 2019?
Yeah, I think it would be good to pull both together. And I agree with you. One webinar I sat in on said they're going to look at your 2019 tax returns. The next one that I sat in on said January to January. The next one that they were doing with the same as idle. The next one said February 15 to February 15. Essentially the 2019, your 2019 full year would be the easiest to pull together, but it wouldn't, especially if you had those changes where you brought on new employees during the first 2 months of the year. I would go ahead and pull your February 15 to February 15 in case that can be used. Let's see. I know that's clear as mud, right? Sorry.
That's great. At least nobody knows for sure. That makes me feel better.
There's so many things on this that nobody knows for sure. And I feel like the regs are going to end up getting tweaked by the problems we encounter and somebody having to get an answer on something. Nanda asked if it's better to work an employee even if minimum hours, or let them go and be furloughed. Again, that's an individual case-by-case question. And you're asking me to give an opinion on something I'm probably just not qualified for. You're going to have to look at that employee and what work you can do for them, and whether that work can be, are they essential? Can it be picked up by another employee? But you're going to have to look at it as your own organization and from, a thinking place instead of a feeling place sometimes, and see what options are available for them. For a business who filed 1099 for independent contractors, yes, if you're a 1099, you can still apply for Paycheck Protection. You're welcome, Albert. Talk to you later. Liz said, Emily, a CPA I heard from on a webinar yesterday, she said the act reads like it should be April 1, 2019 through March 31, 2020, that there's some uncertainty on that point. That would be interesting if that's the case, because people started furloughing in March. So their payroll might go down. I think we've gotten to the end of the question. Could a grant have to be paid back? Now, that if you're talking about that economic injury grant that's through the SBA at $10,000, yes, you could have to pay it back if you didn't use it for the approved expenses. So if you didn't use it for those approved business expenses that we talked about earlier, you would have to pay that back. If you do use it for the approved expenses, you're going to have to show documentation. And just like Emily mentioned, you may want to put that, even at $10,000, on a separate account and charge those specific expenses to it, so it is very clear and easy accounting. But as long as you use that for the approved purposes, it's forgiven. That's when it converts to a grant. Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, I appreciate you guys for being with us today. It's heavy, a lot of information. It's lunchtime. I hope you find something delicious to eat. I want to remind you that a lot of our restaurants are still open and they do curbside delivery. You can call and place your order. They'll take your payment over the phone. Get yourself some dinner, anything like that. just know we love you. We care about you. We're working like crazy to find out all the information for you, but it's hard right now. Have patience and have mercy on these folks that are trying to help you. Tell your banks that are helping you how much you love them, and hang in there, guys. We're all in it together, and we're going to get through it together. Take care.